Hi, Mark here from the Tangibound Podcast Network and host of the flagship show, the Tangibound Podcast. Did you know that we over at Tangibound are always looking for amazing podcasts to promote? And did you also know that we are also proud nerds and geeks of everything from movies, music, gaming, TV shows, and comic books to wrestling, MMA, soccer, and football? Whatever you can nerd or geek out about, we've got it. And if you're interested, we can help you find it. And if you're a show looking for a place to call home, we've got you covered. Side effects may include upset stomach, dizziness, tumors, shakes, and in some rare cases, death from excessive laughter. Though to be fair, it's only sometimes. Other side effects may include diarrhea, gallstones, heart palpitations, and strong desire for cookies on the dark side. Talk to your doctor and visit TangiboundNetwork.com and see if Tangibound Network is right for you.
Sucks to the last drop. Are you gonna blow your head off? Take good aim and don't forget to duck. Life sucks every Monday and all the way to Sunday, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't care how you're doing, what's up or how's it hanging. I'd like to buy this world one last drink. Life sucks all of the time. Stick it up your sunshine, and then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day.
Welcome to the Crazy Life, everyone. My name's Jen. I am your hostess for the evening, or the day, depending on what time of day it is for you guys, I guess. And with me, as always, is Brian and Henno. Hey, guys.
Good morning.
Hi.
Are we not sure where we're at today, Brian?
No.
Well, I'm not sure where the listener is at, so.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Maybe they're around the corner. Maybe they're hiding under their beds.
Yeah. Good.
Depending upon type of day it is. You never know.
Good whatever time of the day it is to you.
Yes.
Yes. Well, with that, how are you guys doing? How's the week's been? It's only been a couple days, but I'm sure eventful days.
I actually, yeah, it was for me, actually. So
do tell.
I totally forgot that I had therapy this week, actually, which... perfect timing, because as I talked on the last episode, I clearly needed to go to therapy because I needed to get my head right again. And it was great because, I got in there, we started talking, and I just immediately went into, I told her about the highs from last week, and I told her how I was able to use tools and actually see the highs as they were happening and actually enjoy them. And all this, basically how I felt like the whole toolbox kind of got used last week, that even when I was having the bad times, I was using things to try to make it so they weren't as bad. But then I explained to her how bad, I was beating myself up. And then we got into the topic of my self-esteem and anxiety, really. And, because my low self-esteem, some of it stems from, they feed each other. Having low self-esteem makes me anxious about certain situations, And, so she gave me, she recommended a book to me, which if anybody out there wants to read also, it's called The 10 Simple Solutions to Shyness. And it's broken down. There's some exercises in there for people that are shy to kind of, oh shoot, I can't think what those kind of exercises are. The one where you're practicing what you're trying to get better at. Submersion, that's what it is. Anyway, so I'm gonna look for that. I gotta grab it on Amazon, or if see if a bookstore around here has it, whatever. But also, she wants me to write down basically things I like about myself, so that essentially it's my cheat sheet. that much like we've talked about looking in a mirror and doing the Stuart Smalley speech of, you're good enough and smart enough and doggone it, people like you, that also it would give me essentially something to look at, that when I'm feeling like I'm beating myself up, is like, go back over this, keep going over these things. And then she gave me a piece of homework which was completely about pushing me out of a comfort zone and vulnerability, which honestly scared the heck out of me a little bit. And part of it, the activity was, she wanted me to post on like Instagram, Facebook, something like that, for people to post what they like about me. And it didn't matter if it was physical or about personality or what, just whatever they wanted to post. Which, whenever you put vulnerability on the internet, you're rolling dice,
Right.
Because you never know if you're going to get awful responses or whatever. Luckily I got 0 awful responses, nobody was mean or anything, which is, also kind of tells you about the people I follow, but it was really overwhelming last night because I waited until the end of the day to read them. Because I people were posting kind of throughout the day, so I was like, I'm just gonna wait till the end, and then I'll read them and whatever. But it was really overwhelming reading that stuff, and it's stuff that didn't surprise me. A lot of people talked about how kind I am, or how I reach out to people and stuff like that, which is those are things I strive for. So it's nice that there's a reinforcement saying, hey, what you're trying to do, you're doing well. But it was really nice reading all that stuff, and I appreciate the people who reached out and took the time to do that, because it wasn't just like, it was an ego feed. I was fishing, but it was one where there was no nefarious reason behind it. I wasn't doing it for, like, I was doing it because I need the help with my self-esteem. It wasn't only for the validation. It was also for, like my therapist said, to push me into, that vulnerability that I don't go to a lot of times. So, that was really interesting though. So,
Sounds like it.
Mm-hmm.
That was, I forgot that you did that, and my reaction when you threw it out there was just like, what I actually said is I'd rather take a naked selfie. Just that, that idea. It's like that it's mixed. Like you're talking about, it's like, am I just seeking affirmation? It's like that. Am I seeking affirmation from people?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Versus also like, that's really throwing it out there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the reason,
in a major way.
Yeah, and part of the reason that she wanted me to do it was because, like, if I sit down and make a list of things I like about myself, it's whatever that list is. She's like, by doing this, you may see things you didn't consider before. Yeah. And like she said, she's like, you will see how many people really like you, and she's like, these are helpful things, because you go, wow, again, I'm smart enough, I'm good, doggone it, people like me, it really is, at its base, it is totally an ego push. But it's one where, my ego is, or not ego, my ego is plenty high. My self-esteem is low, and that's what, it needs a boost. So, it needs to come from me, but it helps when other people, reinforce it, or like she said, give you reasons that maybe you didn't consider, and there were some that I didn't consider. So that's mission accomplished.
But it's still like, what if you just? There is a certain amount of like, okay, how many responses am I going to get too?
Right. I'll be dead honest. I really didn't know how many responses I would get, because that was, if there was a point of anxiety for me, that's what it was that I'd get like 3 responses.
Yeah.
And be like, oh, come on.
There was just so many things to be in utter fear about that whole thing.
Yeah.
Besides the fact of just like, how does this make me feel?
Right.
Hi everyone, tell me what you like about me.
Yeah. And I even did a thing, like, there's that app that's, what is it, Sarah? I don't know, whatever the hell it is.
Yeah, what was that?
It's an it's a thing where you can post anonymously. And I even posted that, and I was like, so if people want to use that so they don't put their names to it, that's fine too. Because, there is that element to it too, to where I'm basically like pointing at people going, hey, you, tell me what you really think of me. I could see where some people might be like, well, even if it's good, I could see, because there's plenty of people I know that I think highly of, but it's almost like I'm embarrassed to be, because you don't want to make it seem like you're just gushing over them, essentially.
Totally.
So I could see where somebody might have that. So I was trying to be considerate of that as well. But I'll tell you what was really, aside from the ego boost, which again, who doesn't love validation? I mean, come on, the best part of this was I went to therapy yesterday. I posted that yesterday. Okay. I knew all the vulnerability things, all the things Henno was talking about that realistically should have basically terrified the hell out of me. And I just posted it. I didn't wait. I didn't put it off for a week. I just threw it up there and did it.
That's what I thought you were going to do, is like wait a few days on that and like marinate on it. And I like jumped onto Facebook and I'm like, oh, there it is.
Yeah, because I actually told you, I think, right before I posted or right after. I can't remember which. But it was right around the same time.
Yeah. I mean, it was cool. And what I liked about it the most, and I don't know if, other people had the same response, and it'd be cool to find out if other people's did, is I actually sat down for a second and I gave it some thought.
Yep.
And in the process of giving it some thought, I reflected on a friendship. Mm-hmm. And it was a great activity for me.
Yeah, and I don't think you were alone.
You did something for me.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't think you were alone, because if you read the comments, there's so many of them that are not just like, you're cool, or something like that.
Yeah.
Almost all of them, in fact, most of them or all of them are, you can tell thought was put into it, or the person already knew and was able to fire that answer out, whichever, but it, most of it wasn't just real, most of it wasn't really trite stuff. It was that people, this is truly what they appreciate,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, and it's a double-edged sword for sure. I mean, there's lots of anxieties and stuff that go along with it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I would be ballsy enough to do it. I mean,
yeah.
That it takes cojones to be able to put your stuff out there.
In fairness, go back to the point where I said my ego is very high. I'm not kidding. Like, people, I don't think a lot of people realize that about me. I really do have a pretty high ego. Right. If my self-esteem raised up enough, I might be insufferable. I don't know. But, it's truly something to where I really do. I'm that weird situation to where it's like I have a very good value of that I'm worth something to others, but for some reason I'm worth nothing to me. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a lot of why I reach out to people to help. I always want to help people, all this other stuff, because it's that feeling of it feeds me, basically, even though it's helping others, it also feeds me to some extent. And and that's kind of where I would get self-worth from, and it's one place to get it from, but it's like I need it in other places too. But when I was talking with my therapist, I went over how, and I mean, I had a little bit of a talk with Henno after we quit recording last week. And I kind of went, and again, I'm not going to go full detail on here, but I went into full detail of why these things bother me, and my self-esteem and whatever. And Henno's reaction was pretty like, wow. So, I'm very good at really destroying myself. Because again, you know all your own weaknesses.
Yep.
But that's where the reframe needs to be for me now, is I need to stop, focusing there. I need to reframe onto the other stuff that I know I bring value to conversations, to hanging out, to all these things, and the thing is, like I said, I know that because other people tell me how they're happy to see me or they're glad I'm here, but for some reason my brain's kind of like, they're just lying, like, and yeah. So it is nice to see all those comments confirming that, you know, and a couple of the people are people from Twitter and stuff that were like, you know, I'd love to hang out with you. Like, that's the kind of stuff that really, and that's the other thing is, you know, I've had a couple people from Twitter that are like, I really want to meet you, you know, and met them, you know, and even our podcast friends and stuff. Henno is one of them, you know, it's just awesome to feel that stuff. And it sucks because I had so much bullying and self-bullying for so many years that it has such a hold on me that it's going to take a while, you know? But that's, I think, where I'm going to focus my fight right now, because I really think that is holding me back as much or more than anything. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It makes a lot of sense. And it's really difficult to accept and to understand how we look through other people's eyes. You know, it's when, regardless of how they put it or how they say it, it's tough to take that in, because it kind of bumps up against that whole positive narcissism. It's like everyone's afraid of being narcissistic. I mean, even you, Brian, when you originally started talking about it, you're almost apologetic about asking people for this, and there's nothing wrong. There's nothing to apologize for, nor should you feel bad or feel apologetic, because everybody needs that. You're 100% right on that, and you know, more people should reach out and say, "Hey, you like me? Why do you like me?"
Yeah. No, I'll tell you what, having done it, I really do feel like if you're a person who feels like you can handle it, because again, there is potential for, you know, nasty comments or, you know, only 3 people responding or, you know, whatever. There are all those kind of things, but I really think it's not a bad thing. And, you know, the other side was, like Henno said, if, you know, he reflected on our friendship while doing it. And I think that's the other part too, is you really look at, why do I like that person? And, you know, so it really shows that you appreciate, you know, what you have with them. And, you know, and I'll be honest, I had a couple people tell me they really enjoyed reading what other people wrote, because they were curious why they liked me, if it was the same reasons or if it was something, maybe a side of me they hadn't seen, because that's always possible with people too. You know, there might be a part of you don't share with everyone or something. So I think it was a great exercise. I'm, you know, I go back in a couple weeks, I'll be, you know, definitely, you know, talking to her more about this, because like I said, I think that's really where my focus is going to be, because I think it's my biggest problem. I really do. You know, because like with drawing and everything else, I think it feeds into all of that, you know?
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, the one thing that I think that the biggest thing to take from it is action steps.
Yep.
You're completely in action steps.
Yeah.
This is the thing for me that recovery was good for, you know, was it got me out of, and this is actually going to probably tie it a little bit into our topic tonight. It got me out of not wanting, you know, thinking that I can do things for myself and taking suggestions.
Yeah.
And actually, for the first time, putting my wants and desires and ego aside and saying, okay, I'll try this. And once I did one and it felt good, I did another. And it really was like the snowball picking up speed and size. And I got better and better and better and better, because I finally became willing.
Yeah.
And like, I like the idea is like I became teachable.
Yeah. And that's totally where I'm at, is I've had an open mind about whatever my therapist tells me. I'm trying, you know, because I so want to just go be a quote normal person, you know, like I don't want to have these fights with myself. I don't want to, you know, even, and I know they're probably always going to be there, but I want it to where it's not every day or every time something happens, you know, and that's like you said, so that puts me in a position of, I've dealt with it long enough. And like I said, when I first went for help, I realized at that point it was either action time or it was time to give up. You know, and that's really where I felt I was. It was either just accept that this is going to consume you or fight it, you know, and I chose to fight.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, again, that'll tie into what we're going to talk about tonight.
and I think one of the things is like this would not have been suggested to you unless you were in a place where it was going to be a positive experience for you. Because I really started thinking about it, is like some of the fears that I would have about it actually wouldn't. If you're in a place where you're in an actionable, place in your life where you're willing to do this kind of thing, chances are you're going to get positive results from this.
Yes.
If you weren't even close to a place where you could even take this on, that probably says more of why you shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah. And my therapist actually even pointed that out, basically, which, the first part of that, about how she wouldn't recommend this to me if she didn't feel I was ready for it. She even said a year ago I probably wouldn't have suggested this. And I was like, yeah, I probably wouldn't have done it if you suggested it a year ago, and I'll be honest, the only way I might have would have been like if I told you guys and you guys were both like, well, we'll do it too, kind of a solidarity, or Tony was like, I'll do it too, just to do it that way. But anyway, so yeah, that's my week. Honestly, cool. I'll tell you, I've felt better. I felt so good walking out of therapy because, again, course of action. I got the brain dump done. Got the negativity out there. She gave me teachable, workable stuff, and then I walked out of there going, I'm going to do this. And when you have a therapy session like that, it's as good as you can feel walking out of therapy, I think. I walked out and felt like hundreds of pounds were lifted off of me, and I was, and it's been, the rest of the week's been slow, but it's, not bad, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Yeah. I'm so glad that you had such a good couple days.
Sorry I took so long, but it was a big follow-up to the whole episode last week.
Right? And absolutely, it was, take as long as you want when these types of things come up.
Yeah, that was a big one.
Yeah.
That's awesome. How about you, Hanno? How's life?
It doesn't suck.
There you
That's
go.
Always a good thing.
Good enough.
Still not sucking.
That's awesome.
Listen, there's a lot of times that is a great day.
Yeah, I really I've wanted to get up early like the last couple of days, and I've had a hard time getting up. But it's nice to still, when I do get up, not beat myself up over it. And not, not have this pressure on myself. I don't know. I just feel like the last couple weeks I've made some changes, and I've recommitted myself to things that make me feel good. I guess that's a great way of putting it.
Perfect.
And feeling good means a better chance with a good tomorrow. Feeling good today.
Yep.
And when I finally decide, like, okay, that's enough for today, and crawl in bed, I feel that's like everything was all right.
Yeah.
It's a nice feeling, and like I always throw in the caveat with this stuff. Who knows how long it's going to last? So enjoy it while I can.
Yeah. It's so funny.
Right.
With a lot of this stuff is one thing I'm noticing a lot with me is I'm losing that mentality a lot of okay, last week I said that, there were highs and lows, but overall I still think it was a good week. This week, even though it's only been a few days, but they've been productive and decent. Mm-hmm. It's one of those, like, instead of, like, right now, I'm feeling optimistic. This is not normal Brian, Well, let me rephrase. Yeah. This is not old normal Brian. I want this to be new normal Brian, but the point is that it's awesome, So it's like you said, Hanno, it's all snowballing here. So, hopefully it is with you too. Even if it's just days that are just okay, Again, if they're okay, they're not bad. So that's that's a step up. It's happy-ish, okay-ish,
Yeah. And the thing that I'm enjoying a lot is, I guess, like, taking the burden off myself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And feeling that even baby steps are great steps, and the days where there's big steps are great days too.
I really,
either one is okay. yeah, like either one is okay. You know what I mean? Like, I guess it's like not judging myself.
Yeah.
Over, like having. I don't know. I guess it comes back to what I said about where you're at. Is like I'm in an action place right now, and that's something that I started the year off.
That's true. You did
with my member.
Yep.
But I fell off.
Yeah. Well,
And how do I know I fell off? Is because I feel like I'm back to where I was at the beginning. Right. It's like I took a respite somewhere in there.
Yeah. Right.
But you don't. Isn't it weird how like you don't know? I always comment on this, especially with recovery stuff. You don't know when you've fallen off the beam until you've gotten back on the beam.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Does
that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Because like I've said with depression, a lot of times I didn't recognize it until I was out of it. Yeah. And then I was like, oh wow, that was a bad week.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Dan just reminded me. My husband just reminded me of because we were talking about a friend of ours, and I'm like, going up to the wedding, I was fine. He's like, you don't remember that? He's like, you were manic for like weeks before the wedding and a couple weeks after the wedding, and I'm like, I was. He's like, oh yeah. I'm like, oh, okay. He's like, why do you think I'm so adamant that you make sure you stay on your meds? He's like, we don't need to be going through that again.
Right?
I'm like, but mania is fun. He's like, mania is fun.
No, you know what? That's not untrue.
No fun.
It's fun for like a little bit because after finally having experienced that because of 2 times now on medicines where I've had a little bit of mania. It was fun for a little bit, and then I was like, this needs to stop because I'm redlining here, and this is not good.
Right. It gets too much. Yeah.
I remember that week that it was actually that 2 weeks that you had of total mania, Brian, and it was like someone's on fire again.
Yeah, I was, But then by the end of it, I was like, oh, this is exhausting. It was, Once it finally calmed down, I was like, geez, I do not want to go through that again. So, and that was once, that was it.
Yeah.
That's enough for me, though. I tried it.
Yeah.
Do not recommend.
It's a trip and a half, and it's very dangerous.
It is.
We make light, folks, but just so you know, it is very dangerous if someone goes into mania, because they're basically, I've spoken about it before, but most of your inhibitions are down to the floor. So you have no inhibitions, you have no restrictions, pretty much on your everything, and it's almost like a wild teen running amok, and lots of trouble can be ensued.
Yeah. It really is. I just put together a clip show for our last episode of Salty Language. And one of the things on there was like, what would you do if you had 24 hours to live? And I said that I would run around basically treating life like it was Grand Theft Auto. And that's kind of what mania was like. So where you really, you're ignoring things that you shouldn't ignore. And, and that's, you just blur right through, metaphorically, or sometimes physically, but for me, metaphorically, blur right through stop signs and places where you would normally shut your mouth, There
is no inhibition.
No.
There's no stop signs, there's no nothing.
Yep.
It's just freewheeling all the way out.
Yeah.
Awesome. But dangerous.
Pretty great, except for the great.
And the thing that I found that was, interesting for my for me being on the other side of experiencing is the idea of I kind of didn't know where I fit in. Like I don't know how to relate to this. It's literally like a new person.
Yeah, it is.
It's like, okay, typically we're within that 10% up or down threshold.
Yes.
Like you could be, we could all be having a great day, or we could be kind of having a not so great day, but you're still within that margin of error.
Yeah.
That you can kind of relate to. But when someone's all of a sudden like way out there, one way or the other, like really extreme, it's a little bit difficult.
It is. Yeah.
Where you're sitting there like, okay, I don't know this person, really.
Well, and especially me.
A bit scary.
Yeah, and especially like me, because I guess it would be like if Jen was really showing like heavy depression signals, you know?
Yeah.
Because like with me, you rarely see me at like that level. Like I'm normally not. I'm not one of those people that, you know, I'm not like yelling and screaming like, you know, and acting crazy. That's not who I am. I'm pretty reserved most of the time. So it's like, you know, to see me like that, it's like I can't imagine, you know, that it was, you know, and other people were like, what's gotten into you? And I'm like, a new medicine. Like, oh, well, this is, yeah. Awesome. And they're like, oh, this is great. And I'm like, no, it isn't. Like, if it doesn't stop, I may go off of this. Because otherwise, I'm, you know, I might as well just do like cocaine. That's kind of how it was, you know, like just, you know, too much red line. So I don't recommend that feeling if you can help it.
Exactly. So my week, it's only been a couple days, but I've had some schooling, which is a good thing. I've been schooled.
Yeah.
We had a conversation a couple weeks ago about when you know you're right and others aren't buying it, basically, or don't want to hear it. Yeah. So I'm being faced with that now, and it's really difficult, folks. I'm not going to lie. You know, and I have a very large ego when it comes to my work and my work knowledge. And it really hard for me to accept that there are more than one ways of doing things. And if someone chooses to do something that's not the most efficient, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's not going to be the end of the world.
Right.
It's tough for me to accept that because I want to shake them and I want to say, don't you understand?
Yep. Why won't you do it my way? Yeah.
Exactly. My way's better.
Yeah.
And I even had to do an exercise today where I did someone else's way. Because, I mean, most of the time I'm okay if I can do it. As long as I can do it my way, then myself, I'm okay. If someone else wants to do it their way, fine, whatever. If we all get to the end of the game together, that's fine. You know, that doesn't bother me too much. Bothers me when someone infringes onto how I want to do something, and as a team, we decide, and I use we in the loosest sense of the term, that another way is better than my way, and I have to comply. Really nailed on the chalkboard for me.
Yeah, I bet.
Really
I know. I'm the same way. For years, you know, new manager comes in and they're like, okay, we're going to do this way now. And I'm like, ugh, you know.
And it's like the first thing you want to say is, okay, look, we did this before. This is what happened. Here's the downsides to it.
Yeah.
Here's the upsides to it. I've already looked at this and examined it all the way around, and it's not the best option.
Right. Until their response is, for you.
Right. So, so I've been kind of working through that and trying to make sure that I swallow my ego, as large and grandiose as it is, and tough to swallow, but try to put that ego aside as best I can. And also, you know, I have a very large ego when it comes to training. I like training people. And when someone comes in and teaches my trainee a different way than what I train them, it's also kind of a ego hit. Yeah, I guess, you know.
Well, sure, because you probably feel like, well, why did you feel they need retrained? You know, like, exactly. Why are you saying I didn't train them well enough, kind of a thing? And it may not even be that at all.
Like, why are you giving them options of how to do something? Yeah. I've already told them how to do it.
I've already showed them the right way. Yeah, exactly.
I already showed them the right way. What are you doing?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's definitely It made me smile because I thought about our show, and I'm like, yeah.
Really quick, how often do you guys catch yourself doing that? Like doing something and you go, we just talked about this, or it's something from the show kind of like smack you right in the face. Happens all the dang time.
It does. So, but yeah, and I'm also finding out that 9.5 hours is about my sweet spot for work. Mm-hmm. That after 9.5 hours, I can no longer leash the beast, shall we say, and my mouth starts getting getting away from me.
Yeah.
Same. So I found my sweet spot. It's about 9.5. Right there is when I need to start packing up and starting to get home, ready to go home for the day. Because after that point,
right,
it's kind of no holds barred, and get myself in trouble if I get asked the wrong question,
Right. So. How's your day, Jen?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, just a couple aha moments and some interesting life lessons I'm learning, and it kind of sucks learning. I don't like learning sometimes, but it's really important. And
yeah, most people don't like to learn that they're wrong or that their way isn't going to be the best or used or whatever. So
yeah,
I get
regardless if it's the best or not.
Mm-hmm.
I know it depends upon what you're measuring the best against.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're right. There's a lot of times you really can't measure the best. It's like if both ways provide results and the results are equal, then, it's like, like I back when I took algebra, I did a lot of the math in my head, got the answer, but it kept getting marked wrong. And it's like, it's right here, and she's like, yeah, but you're not showing your work. And it's like, my way's much faster. Why am I being penalized for being efficient? Yeah, exactly. And she's like, because this is the way you're supposed, it has to be done. So yeah, I understand. I'm very stubborn when it comes to that stuff. Well, I'm just stubborn in general, but
yeah, it's interesting because the first time in my life I've ever received some feedback, and this has been quite a few months ago, but I received some feedback that I have a bit of a temper, which
really,
yeah.
All right.
And which is unusual for me. For most people who know me outside of work would really find that surprising, as it seemed Brian did. But when it comes to my judgment being questioned, and it comes to my processes and my efficiency being questioned and disregarded, or basically when I feel I'm being insulted, yeah, it's I take things I get angry pretty quickly, and I'm finding out about myself that I'm like, okay, and trying to keep my temper in check when in circumstances where I just again want to wring someone's neck and say, why don't you see it my way? But that's okay. I have to, so it's stuff for me to work on.
Yeah.
Add to the list.
Yep.
But something that we wanted to talk about today, folks, is kind of a recap or a refresh or a revisit, one of those words anyways, of a topic that we've been talking about before, which is, what do you do when you find yourself in a situation, especially with a loved one or someone close to you, that they need help, but they don't want it? And this is a little bit of a different take, obviously, than what we talked about a couple weeks ago. I'm talking more along the lines of, you think someone is dealing with an addiction or a mental illness or some heavy, serious stuff that could even be dangerous stuff, and they're not at the bottom yet. They're not ready yet. So what do you do? How do you help them? Very difficult situation that a lot of people find themselves in. And, the first thing that I think we should talk about most is being there. There's an article from Psych Central, which is also a great website. There's 9 best ways to support someone with depression. So this one's specifically around depression, but it's applicable for just a variety of things. The first one, they say, is be there. According to Serenity, I do apologize if I mispronounced the name, the best thing you can do for someone with depression is be there. When I was struggling with my own depression, the most healing moments came when someone I loved simply sat with me while I cried, or wordlessly held my hand, or spoke warmly to me with statements like, "You're so important to me. Tell me what I can do to help you. We're going to find a way to help you feel better." I think that's so important. The understanding and acceptance of where someone's at. And this is, of course, given that they're not actively in danger. If someone is actively in danger, that's a whole nother conversation.
Right.
But this is someone who's...
But absolutely just as, if not more important, that you stay with them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But yeah, that's more severe. We want to make sure that you're taking more immediate action.
Right.
This is more of long-term action or short-term action to get to hopefully a long-term solution. So, be there. I don't know. What do you think, Brian? I mean, you've had a lot of experiences with depression, obviously.
Well, it's tough because, like, people want to be there for you. Like, generally, people around you, especially really close to you, want to help you. And, until you're really ready to go get help, you tend to, the nature of the illness is that you isolate, you push away. So when people keep, no matter how hard you push, they keep staying there, or they push back, basically saying, "I'm not going anywhere." It can really, it really could mean the world to you, because there are a lot of people that would try a few times and then give up on you, because it's hard for them. Mm-hmm. It's hard on them as well. It's not just, not just hard for you. It's also hard on the people who want to help you to watch someone they care about essentially degrade, So yeah, it's important to let people know that they're not alone, that you'll be there for them, that kind of stuff. But the one thing I'll say is, if you say you're going to be there, mean it. And I don't mean that you should wait hand on foot on anybody, nothing like that. I just mean, actually be there, though, if they need it,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then, Hanno, from your perspective, I know that, you've experienced a few different people in your life that you've mentored and stuff through your groups and things like that. What do you think about being there, and one of the most important parts of that whole concept?
The one good thing about being part of any sort of a group environment for people generally walking in there are already seeking help.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then it becomes more of as what measure, that there's some advantages to it. I think the hardest part for me is when it's friends of mine.
Yeah.
And people that I'm talking to that aren't part of any sort of either a recovery group or whatever it is, and then it really does become about, well, I'll be here to listen.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It's you always want to do it, but there is that luckily for the most part, I haven't had to experience anyone where it was like, okay, we need to get you into some help right away.
Yeah.
Like, you need to be checked into a rehab now. We need to go to a hospital.
Right.
Or we need to get hold of the suicide hotline.
Yeah.
I'm lucky that I haven't had to experience that, because that was a great thing to say, is that just right off the bat, that level, that's That's a different deal.
Yeah.
Most people when they start having conversations, and here's the other thing, the same thing with group. Most people when they walk into a group, they've gotten beaten down enough. They've gotten beaten down to a certain point that they're willing to talk to somebody else.
Yeah.
And so right off the bat there is an opportunity, you know, at least to get a conversation started.
True. Yeah.
You know.
It's true.
Yeah, because it can be tough that if you're just there for somebody, they may not want to talk. You know, that maybe it isn't what they need at that point. Maybe, you know, maybe they just need someone in the room with them, essentially, you know, or whatever. You know?
That's what the kind of, where I'm kind of getting at. It's like it's a lot easier for me in when I'm involved in the recovery community. People are more open to talking. That's why they're there. Mm-hmm. You know, it's. I think it's a little more. I think it's more frequent when people. It's with relationships and family, where you walk in and it's that situation. It's the time to have the talk, but you know what I mean. That doesn't really happen with friends so much.
Yeah.
Or strangers. You know, it's like it's usually family or your significant others.
Yeah. And
that's not easy. And sometimes that is, like you're talking about, sometimes you do just need to kind of sit there.
Yeah. Because it is, a lot of people have great intentions, but it's really difficult on them, you know, as I've been told and whatever, you know, and been there myself, where I'm kind of the outside person. But it's tough on them because a lot of times, again, as we've talked on the show plenty of times, you know, when your rules change, you need to let other people know that the rules have changed, essentially. Let them know what you need. Because sometimes they won't know. Like, they just don't know what to do. And that makes it more frustrating for them, which can lead to maybe them not, you know, answering your call all the time, or you know, like, so it's really important for both sides to do kind of their part in the thing. But the people on the outside, it's like, you know, the best I can ask for is you just be patient and, you know, just keep checking, you know, that kind of thing.
So one thing for as far as an initial contact goes, like, let's just talk about, we're looking at step one.
Yeah.
Somebody is either called asking for some help, a family member on behalf of their loved one says, hey, would you mind coming and talk? You know, I know you might have some experience with this, whether it's a mental illness, you know, recovery issue, addiction, whatever it is. Hey, you know, do you think you could, you know, maybe come over and what I have learned is if the first thing out of that person's mouth is, oh, I know what you're here to talk about and I don't want to hear any of it, then it's like, leave the business card, say, you know, thank you. Anytime you want to talk to me, give me a call.
Yeah.
You know, I'm happy to be here for you, but you don't force the issue.
Right.
And that's been pretty much what I've been taught is especially with us, we have a hotline and there's a call, and calls come in from the hospital typically. And you walk in the hospital, and if the person in the bed who looks like, I mean, they're yellow, you know, I mean, they're you know, they're literally, their body's shutting down. They're a wreck, and they look at you, and they basically, you know, give you a middle finger. It's politely say, you know, if you ever do need to talk to somebody, give us a call again. But you know, otherwise, I hope you get better.
Yeah.
And you turn around and you walk away.
Right. And, you know, there's an element of that, too, that makes sense. Like, you know, if you've got, like, a card with, you know, crisis hotline numbers, or if you pull it up on your phone or write it down for somebody, you know, that could be just as applicable there. You know, like, hey, look, you know, I understand if you don't want to talk to me, but if you just need to talk to someone, you know, here's the thing. Because like I was saying before, I told somebody, because they were talking about they didn't want to go to therapy because, you know, it's a sign of weakness, essentially, which, first of all, it's not. But second of all, if they do feel that way, it's like, well, here, use this because you stay anonymous. Nobody will ever know you called. You know, none of your friends and family know you called. So you can talk to them, get the help you know, get a little bit of help, or at least talk with somebody and not, you know, and not appear weak, even though you really, you know, like I said, it's not a sign of weakness at all.
No, it's a sign of strength, honestly.
It is. Yeah, you finally are,
opening yourself up and being vulnerable to talk about your deepest and darkest.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty darn strong in my book.
Well, I mean, look at it as a fight. You know, which do most people feel takes more courage? Curling up in the fetal position or standing up and fighting back? You know?
Yeah.
And really, that's what you're doing, is you're saying when you reach out for help, you're saying, I want to fight back. And that is, you know, that's an incredibly courageous step. And it's a hard step for people to take. You know? Pulling in and isolating is so much easier than standing up and fighting. So... You know.
Well, something that this reminded me of, there's a cartoon that I believe, Brian, you posted on Facebook a while ago from boredpanda.com. It's a picture. It says, how to care for a sad person. And step 1 is you lay the blanket out. Step 2, you pick sad person up. Step 3, you lay sad person in blanket. 4, you roll them like a sushi. 5, sad roll on bed, couch, comfy place. Hug roll close. Put on roll's favorite movie. Feed roll snacks. Make sure roll is well hydrated. Tears make roll dehydrated. And you'll get a happy little sushi roll.
Yeah. Now, the last part of that is, you know, obviously...
That's being facetious.
Right.
But, yeah.
But I think that kind of underlines the whole... topic of the P there, you know, is sometimes that's what you need to do is just hold the person, just be there for the person, and you know, it's so tough because there's so many different circumstances, so we have to talk in generalities, of course, but you know, stand by them and just be there for when they do want the help and they are ready to accept it. The step 2 that they talk about is try a small gesture. And I think this kind of, you spoke on this a little bit, Henno, already. That, you know, you're showing up, you know, giving them the information. And if they're not ready to accept it, you just leave it for them, you know, and just the small gestures. You know, talking. Sometimes talking makes a big difference. And just... opening up conversations with them about the topic that you're wanting to talk about, and just having generalized conversations, even if it's not specific. But again, things like that can help.
But again, not forcing anything, you know.
No, because just keeping it very light and overarching versus very specific and pointed.
Well, it can be specific and pointed. You just, if they are not receptive to it, you know. Pick up a hint, basically, you know, like if they're fighting, like Henno said, essentially, you know, if you start in on, you know, maybe you should go see a therapist, and they immediately are like about it. It's like, well, clearly this isn't, you know, because at that point they've essentially let you know their mind is closed. So, like Henno said, you know, leave the card or say, okay, you know, well, if you ever, you know, just walk it back a little bit, and it's so tough because you just never know. You know, some people might be like, yeah, you know, I've thought about it, or it's this, you know. It might open a dialogue, but nothing else. Reaching out is a great, you know, that's a great gesture right there. Just, how are you doing, or whatever, you know.
And the next one I talk about is don't judge or criticize. That's a tough one for people, because that's the first thing we want to do is kind of we automatically kind of go to judgment of, you know, oh, it's not really that bad, and stuff like that. And it's really easy to go there, but you have to resist it all possible way,
right?
You know,
because it's all perspective. You know?
Yeah.
Again, my worst depression days are probably not as bad as, you know, I'm sure there's someone who has worse than me, you know, and there's probably someone worse than them, and down the line, you know, but there's also people better, you know, the other way. But in no way does that diminish any one of those people's struggle, you know? So
exactly.
You have to be careful with that, because, you know, maybe you don't struggle from this, but, you know, you have your other, you know, struggles, whether it's work or something else, you know, and it's the last thing somebody wants to be told in that is, you know, that they're wrong, or, you know, oh, if you just did this, you'd feel so much better. It's like, you know.
Or pretend that they assume that they understand you better than you understand yourself.
Yeah.
Even if they do know the answer, doesn't necessarily mean that they know you.
Yeah.
And here, thing I kind of touched on in our last episode, is about this idea of, approaching situations with big, soft, fluffy kid gloves.
Mm-hmm.
A kindler, gentler approach kind of ties into this part of the topic, which is, anyone that's had any experience with therapists will eventually figure out that the therapist doesn't do much except guide you to come to your own conclusions.
Yep, that's so true. Yep.
And that's kind of the way to help people the most effectively, is to guide them to, and that's where I this idea of, like for me, if somebody calls me and they're drunk, I'm not going to talk to them. Because it's like, I might as well just be talking to a brick wall.
Yeah, right.
Now, the next morning when they've got a vicious hangover, great time to talk to them. Because they're full of remorse, and they're full of guilt, and they feel they're weak.
Yeah.
And it's the truth, though.
It is,
because the point is they are already thinking about the fact that, I did it again.
Yep.
And then I have a possibility of maybe leading them to the conclusion that they might need some help.
Right.
It's great advice, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and that's why this idea of you talk to people when they're at a bottom. It's hardest when people are fully in their addiction, and it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's overeating, whether it could be other eating disorders, it could be depression, anxiety, blah blah blah, the whole thing, addictions, alcoholism, whatever it is. When people are fully in their disease, they don't want to hear about it. They have to be at that place where they've kind of come out of it a little bit, and that's where I think these steps are really good, because you can make things worse by being judgmental.
Yeah.
By coming on too strong.
Yeah. Well, there's another reason, like for depression especially, that being judgmental and whatnot hurts, is my brain is already telling me I suck.
Yeah. Yep.
It's constantly telling me how awful I am. If you start doing that, you've just validated my depression.
Yeah.
And I don't know if a lot of people fully understand that, because, and the worst thing for a person is to get validation for their mental illness like that. Like when depression's telling me I'm terrible or something bad is going to happen, and then something bad happens, your brain immediately goes, see? And then you will spiral from there. And then next time something happens, you're going to, instead of seeing a potential positive reinforcement, you're going to see the negative reinforcement and go, well, last time, kind of like if you get broken up with, and you go, well, if I reach out or put myself out there again, I'm just going to get hurt again, basically. And that it fulfills itself, because you're never going to you're going to just constantly believe in, or buy into it. So, that's something I forgot to say last time we talked about this, I think, and it's something I think is really important, because I had some people who did, they didn't mean to be judgmental, but they were, and when that happened, it just solidified what I was already thinking,
Well, the avoid tough love approach, and don't minimize their pain, and avoid offering advice. All of these kind of go together with kind of what you were talking about and what Hannah was mentioning. But I think the avoid tough love, they said, they write, many individuals think that being tough on their loved ones will undo their depression or inspire positive behavior changes. For instance, some people might intentionally be impatient with their loved one, push their boundaries, use silence, be callous, or even give an ultimatum. But consider that this is as useless, hurtful, and harmful as ignoring, pushing away, or not helping someone who has cancer.
Yeah.
And that's why where it talked about just having a conversation, I find that to be so effective, is if you are, if somebody is having a difficult time, and either you just happen to be around each other, or you've been asked to go check in on someone, or whatever it is I have found so many times that just in the process of normal conversation, if the person really wants help, it'll come up.
Yep.
It's going to come up. If it doesn't come up, they probably don't. They're not even either aware of it, or they absolutely don't want to talk about it.
Mm. And sometimes it can be really subtle too, because I remember Henno, you telling us about, a story about someone that you ended up talking with that you were kind of, didn't realize that he was putting out those vibes, that he wanted to talk, and once you talk to him, it kind of opened that door, and unfortunately sometimes people are like that, and it's hard to help people like that because sometimes you just don't pick up on what they're putting out there. So, if you're a person who is going to reach out for help, just scream it from the mountaintops.
Right?
No, it's, but, kind of, again, look for differences in pattern. That's a great way to, a lot of times, pick up when somebody wants a change in their life. All of a sudden, they're talking to you more, or maybe they'll talk to you about a certain topic more. Like if somebody were to start talking to me about depression more and more, or therapy, I would probably see that as a place to, okay, well, let's talk about this. Again, not try to force, but, say, do you have any questions or blah, blah, something along those lines to where maybe you can comfort them to where they may be more receptive to trying it, because, again, a lot of people still have really negative perceptions of, like antidepressants or therapy.
And there's the next thing. The last thing that it talks about that I wanted to bring up is it talks about being patient. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a huge piece.
That's the hardest part.
Especially when you're dealing with someone who's not ready yet, who's not ready for help yet. Be patient with them. They need to come to it on their own. As much as it stinks, you have to be patient. By no means does that mean that they're putting yourself at risk. So, you have to find that balance, and you got to make sure that you take care of you. So, if that means getting help for yourself, and getting, if the person won't get help from themselves, but you being a loved one and a cared one, if it's negatively affecting you, then get help for yourself. Go and talk to a professional. Mm-hmm. And, and make sure that you stay strong and you get yourself in the right place, that you can be there and you can help them when they're ready. Take that time of being patient to make sure that, as we've always said, as we keep saying on the show, fill your cup before you can fill someone else's. Mm-hmm. So,
and I think that's one of the greatest pieces of advice is, in order to do the previous steps, and especially that last one, meaning being patient, but all of those ideas of like being able to leave it, being able to take a kind, gentle approach, not be judgmental, all those kind of things. The best way to have that and to be able to do all those things is to put yourself in the most knowledgeable position possible.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I guarantee, for whatever ism is out there, there is a group, and it could be on the internet.
Yep.
There are phone groups all over this country. I mean, I have friends that still do group phone conversations, and they do monthly meetings. There is a support group for the people that have to, that suffer as a result of being in relationships with people with various problems. Mm-hmm. And it's everything.
Yep.
And yes, they tend to be 12-step groups, but you know what? Nothing wrong with that. They are happy to talk to you, whether it's you're with someone that has a gambling problem, a money problem, mm-hmm. an eating disorder, an addiction, their mental health. Those tend to become more from hospitals that'll have those kind of support groups. Yeah. So you can get a hold of your local hospital if you're in a major city.
Right, or like a mental health board or something like that. There's usually one in every city,
Yep. And like my problem up in here in the mountains is I just don't have access to that kind of stuff. Sure. But that's why I talk about there are internet groups and there are phone-in groups. And what you get to at least have a place where you can not only get advice from people, but vent a little in a place where you're not making the situation worse.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a loved one, a relative, your significant other, or your closest friend or whatever, that will then allow you to become more patient because you gain understanding and you have an outlet somewhere to wait until, like I said last episode, wait until the miracle happens, because the truth is we are merely witnesses, and not everyone is ready. And we've kind of touched upon this idea of like, I've looked at everything that I've said up till this point is from the standpoint of someone has reached out for some help, or you already have an inroad, or blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
But the real question is what do you do when a person is fully in their disease?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
they don't want to hear it.
And
that's different.
What you were saying about the support groups and all this also is a great point, that if you're with someone and they won't get help, you might be able to help them better by going to these groups. Because
by getting help.
You can learn how to help them in everyday stuff. So there's so much value in that. And again, if you're just not knowledgeable of whatever they're dealing with, whether it's, a mental illness or addiction or whatever it is, again, like Heno said, there's tons of, places out there. Again, like, I think it's like mentalhealth.org or something like that. I think it's like a nationwide one that gives you like a breakdown of different things. You can go on WebMD and look it up. There's so many places that if you want to find out about someone's, bipolar disorder or depression or alcoholism or whatever, you can look for signs. And then there's generally places that, like I said, will give you help as the outsider, not the person with the condition or whatever, but the people on the outside. So it's just a matter of, just the same as you want them to look for help, you can also look for help, to be a better, I don't know what the word for it is, companion, partner, or whatever, teammate. So that's, definitely look into that stuff. That's why a lot of times we include links, in the show notes and stuff, is because sometimes there's some great resources. That's why, like, the stuff I have posted on our Facebook page, under the notes thing, that's why I do that, is so that if somebody needs these resources, you can find them easier. But a simple Google search will pull up pretty much anything you need.
And ultimately, you have to work on, when you're dealing with someone who's down the rabbit hole and is really stuck, you got to make sure that you take care of yourself and understand that you have choices, they have choices. Mm-hmm. They are making those choices, and you will have to make choices, and you can't force choices on them. It's their choice if they want to stay in whatever addiction or mental illness or whatever. If they don't want help, they don't want help. That is their choice to make. It is your choice to make how you want to handle it. So, and that's all up to you to kind of, take care of yourself, make sure you're strong, make sure you take care of your mental and physical well-being, and be there as long as you can be there for them. But if you can't, you can't.
Yeah. And
that's okay too.
Yeah. Sometimes people go just so long or so far down the rabbit hole that you can't help them, and that's something sometimes you have to accept too, is not everybody can be helped by you right now, all those kind of different things too. So don't beat yourself up over that. Make sure you allow yourself to say, hey, I've done what I can do. If they keep refusing you, that's not on you, So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's where getting involved with other groups, mm-hmm. or just even other people and individuals, it doesn't matter, is very useful, because sometimes you have to make a difficult decision, and as we all know, it's easier to make those decisions with other people, with help, with support, than it is to do it by yourself, because there's a lot of doubt involved. And one of the other things I wanted to touch on is if somebody is in whatever their illness or their diseases or whatever it is, their addictions, having the conversation about what's causing the problems is harder than the nuts and bolts things that are happening, right? So there, like we always talk about is the addiction is people say like addictions that the disease is all the stuff that happens are symptoms of the disease, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you can talk about symptoms. That's totally legit.
Yeah.
That's how you can get in sometimes if a person, because sometimes people are just not ready to even face it and they're in complete denial.
Well, here, real quick, I'm going to jump in. I can give a great example of this, which was when Jen first went to the doctor and she came home and her doctor said that she, was probably bipolar. I immediately went, wow, that makes sense. And she could not believe it. Like as soon as she mentioned that her doctor said that, it just clicked in my head, and all of a sudden, and at this point I had known Jen for 15 years, something something to that effect. So all of a sudden my brain is replaying so many things going, oh my God, this makes so much sense. It was such a light switch for me, and she had a harder time seeing it, but once we started talking about it, she was like, wow, it really is right there, So, like you said, just talking symptoms and stuff, like, I had never thought about it. I'd never read up on bipolar, basically. So, because I was, like a lot of people, thinking bipolar is just crazy mood swings at the time, and I'm glad I know better now.
But it's so much more.
Oh, so much more than that. Yeah.
And the thing is you, like, I might have an idea. What somebody's going through.
Yeah.
Or what their issue is. And if I go up to them and go right to it, and they don't want to hear about it, then that it's over. The conversation is done.
Absolutely.
It turns into an argument. It turns into I don't want to talk about it, whatever it is, it's done. But if I talk about symptoms, like, well, why did you lose your job again?
Mm-hmm.
What happened? Do you want to talk about what happened? That is a little less confrontational than, hey, I think you have this problem and you should get some help.
Yeah.
Yes. True.
And the same thing goes with, like with whatever it is, somehow it will affect our lives and the lives of the people around us, whether it's coworkers, once again, loved ones, friends, anything like that. So there's always an avenue that way, and there's a great way of getting in, which is asking questions.
Yeah.
Not making accusations, not making statements on their behalf.
Yeah.
If you are going to talk about how something's affected you, talk about from your own point of view. This is how something made me feel.
Yeah.
Not, this is what you did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That, it's not about what they did to you, it's about how you feel or how something affected you. And that is always the way to come at any sort of a conversation like this, because it is difficult. Mm-hmm. And if you're being affected by it, talk about how it affects you, because no one can deny you your feelings.
And that works both ways. Like,
yeah,
and the fact, plus it helps you understand where their mindset is. Like me, for the longest time, if somebody, oh, how you doing? I'm fine, or not bad, whatever, and move on, And now there's times people ask me how I'm doing, and they'll get a book, because I'm more honest about it, because I know, again, they can help me if I'm honest with them, So, and by them asking, I know most of the, there's a difference. Like if you just, if someone at the store or something, how you doing? They don't want your life story. But, like if a friend says, how are you? They probably want to know the legit answer to some extent. So it's, and if I tell you where I am with my brain right now, you can help me more, or at least understand it a little bit better so that, or, which can be helpful, because sometimes really all you need is much like a therapy thing. Sometimes all I need is to just get stuff out of my head. So telling you how I feel might be all I need at that time from you. Other times I might need essentially, a lot of us, sometimes you just need somebody basically to, pat you on the head and say, it'll be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that's not enough.
Exactly. Well, guys, I don't know. What you think?
I hope that can help somebody.
We doing good? All right. Cool. I agree. I really hope that can help people and give you a little refresher on some of the stuff that we've talked about before, too.
Yeah.
Well, with that, if you want to continue the conversation with us, folks, you know the drill. You can reach me on Twitter at Jen's Crazy Life. That's Jen with a G. You can also reach the show at thecrazylifepodcast.weebly.com. Why did that sound weird? But anyways, it's great. You can also shoot us an email at thecrazylifepodcast@outlook.com. And you, Henno?
You can find me on Twitter at IdaHenno. You can find me on Facebook Messenger, Henno Heiter. And yeah.
You can also find the show at The Crazy Life Pod on Twitter. You can also find us over on Facebook at facebook.com/group/crazylifepodcast. You can find me on Twitter at Stunami. You can find my other podcast at salty_language or at saltylanguage.com. And that show is Very Not Safe for Work. We're part of the Tangent Bound Network, which can be found at tangentboundnetwork.com. And so go give them a shout, see what Mark has been up to over there. Excuse me. I lost my place again. Dang it. If you want to help the show out, if you're using iTunes, please leave us a review, rate, subscribe if you haven't already. If you're using other apps to get your podcast, please use the share or like options. All that stuff kind of helps us just get noticed a little better. And then, of course, I'll say we're not doctors, therapists, trained professionals of any kind. Please don't self-diagnose, and please do not mistake listening to our show as a replacement for therapy. Please, as I have said plenty of times now, please go get the estimate. If you think you need help, seek it out. Don't wait 20 years like I did. I can't emphasize that enough. When you're ready, go get help, but push yourself to get ready, because it's going to be better. No. So, again, please don't self-diagnose or again, we're just offering our opinions here. We're not professionals. If you're feeling as though you may harm yourself or others, please reach out to somebody in your support system, or call the suicide prevention hotline number or 911. Tell them you're having a crisis, or if you can get someone to take you to a hospital. But most importantly in that is, please don't act on that. And if you can get someone to come over, please don't be alone, because that's one of the worst things for that situation. Again, there's a bunch of resources over on our Facebook page if you need help, or again, just Google, suicide prevention line or something like that. And again, don't wait until you might be at a point to where you would follow through on it. If you notice yourself having suicidal ideations of any kind or planning, let your doctor know, let your friends know, and I don't mean let one or the, I mean let everybody kind of, let someone in on that so they can check up on you. Or
say ouch.
Yeah, or get you the help you need. Yeah. And, and lastly, as we've already said on here, please reach out to somebody, especially if they are dealing with something, but even if they're not, tell somebody that you appreciate them, that you love them. Tell them one thing that you like about them.
Nice.
Whatever it is, just because, God knows there's enough awful hatred being spread around right now. So let's try to force it the other way. So, yeah.
Absolutely. With that, everybody, love yourself, love others, and spread the love around. Have a good week.